Hey everyone. I'm going to invite you to pull up a chair with me today, which is why I've made this chair available for you. This week's theme was a conversation expressed in two ways among several people. It was either faith in action or believing in something you cannot see within the family company, or a company that wants to behave more like a family, because there was a combination of those two categories. And what came out of these conversations as it relates to business, especially whether it's productivity, performance on projects with individual people, it was that struggle that people have when it comes to believing in something you cannot see. Think about the tradition of the company, whether it's the 25, the 55, or even 75-year-old company, and how people who were not there in those early days don't really understand what the tradition is of the company, and whether it's an expression on a wall, stating your values on the wall, or some other kind of an image like the founder's image on the wall. A lot of it just isn't writing on the wall, and it's not expressed on the wall. It's expressed through a lot of stories. And those stories, as people reflected with me this week, are a lot of untold stories that people just don't talk about, because they're focused on the accountability with projects and other performance and those jobs that may be in those individual areas where they're working, or small groups. And when it comes to faith, the one reflection that people shared is it's often an expression of faith in very small groups, like peer groups within the company. And that's the only place it happens. And those remain as untold stories for the whole company, because those few people as peers, typically with common expertise or working on particular jobs, keep those stories to themselves within that group. So it remains an untold story for the company. And as your tradition grows, what the tradition really is as it evolves. So the takeaway from this message was to ask people to share some of these stories in these Friday forums, and maybe mix up some of those peer groups to bring people together to share something that they've learned. And a great way to do it is to share one of those great outcomes, rather than sharing some of the mistakes or opportunities for improvement. Talk about what really went well and celebrate that. Celebrate that as a new story of the new tradition, and relate it back to how this thing all started. One of those traditions that came up this week was the founder who used to come into the manufacturing floor, look around and say, "Hey, there's a spot, let's clean that up." And it was an employee of 35 years who said, "I remember the founder saying, hey, the floor doesn't look completely clean. Let's clean up that spot really well to make sure that the floor is always clean." And a lot of the new people just didn't even know that story of what that cleanliness meant to the tradition of the company. So the takeaway, believing in things you cannot see, means you have to hear some of those stories that happen among those small groups of expertise in the company, among those peers. So invite those people to come together in some structured way to share something good that came out of maybe a learning experience among the group, or maybe a learning experience with a client. Bring those people together in those mini Friday forum sessions. Bring that expertise together among those small groups of peers, and link it up to that long-standing tradition. So even the newer people, the second, third, fourth generation people who don't know the founder very well, as I did when I started a family company, I didn't know the founder at all, and he wasn't really interested in talking to people. He stepped back and became almost an absentee owner. So I had to learn this story from other people, and I invite you to do the same thing, to use that story that relates to your expertise, a job you completed, a job that was done well, and bring it together to link it up to the tradition by sharing the story with a few other people. Share that success, connect the tradition to expertise, bring it all together so everybody can be a part of this family and feel like they all belong with that same level of credibility. Thanks. Talk to you again next week.